What drives me to teach people is you know, the reality is that whether you accept or reject the violence or you're indifferent to violence, uh, violence always was, is, and will be part of our life. You know, like it, dislike it, it's part of human nature. You know, those who can, they take things that they want. Those who can't defend themselves and protect things that they have, or lifestyle, or culture, or religion, or you name it.
Yeah.
You know, they fall victims to violence. And if you look at human nature, really everything works either because of violence or because of threat of violence. Okay? You look at most modern societies. You know, every law. Why that law has power? Because there's threat of violence behind that law. If you don't follow the law, we will do this and that to you, and we have institutions to do that. Police, courts, it's violence. It's violence, you know. So a lot of people in quote unquote civilized societies, you know, they'll say, you know, we have to get away from the violence, we have to reject the violence, we have to exterminate the violent behavior and violent thoughts and violent culture and violent movies, video games, music, anything mentioning violence, anything you know, mentioning any kind of use of force for whatever reason. Uh, they say that needs to be somehow pushed away from our lives. Meanwhile, the same people, you know, they write the laws, they execute the laws, they enforce the laws to what? To a threat of violence. You know, and I just, you know, after coming out of the military, where you have sometimes overwhelming ability, you know, to extend the violence towards the enemies, towards the opposition, whatever you want to call it. And I realized that in civilians, citizens, regardless of what country, regardless of what regime they live under, regardless of political system, religion, they're mostly defenseless. They cannot defend themselves. You know, they're surrounded by violence from criminals, from bad guys, from their own governments, from their own, you know, institutions that enforce the laws, and there's nothing they can do about it. You know? And I think it's sad. It's kind of pathetic. You know, and now living in USA, you know, that process is becoming more pronounced. You know, because your personal freedoms, your personal rights, all that stuff getting, although we like to talk about it, you know, we bring the freedom and democracy, but it's not quite like it. Not quite like it. So my passion is, you know, to give people, to offer people. I can't give. I can only offer people some options. You know, if they decide that there is something worth defending, be it a criminal attack on the street, be it a home invasion, be it carjacking, be it terrorist attack, be it whatever, or be it government that goes beyond what government should go and do. Uh, Normal good people should have means to defend themselves and protect what needs to be protected. And one thing is having means, as in material means, you know, be it weapons, be it, you know, whatever. But none of that has zero meaning with it, zero meaning without training. You know, because training puts it to use. Training teaches you how to react to situations, prepares you mentally, psychologically, physically, emotionally, how to deal with the stress of violence, and how to use the material means that you may have at your disposal. So if it answers it, that's what motivates me. You know, it's it's determined by so many things. You know, it's determined by so many things. First of all, do you even know you are in combat situation? As a soldier, when you're in a war zone, you know, as a police officer, when you go to arrest some violent criminal or gang, you know, you anticipate that. You expect that it's your job. It's part of your profession. It's what you do. As a civilian, combat happens not on your terms. You know, and so obviously, what's going to happen in your mind, what's going to happen in your deeper than your mind, it's going to differ greatly. It's going to differ greatly based on your preparation, based on your mindset, based on the context of what you do for a living. What is your job at this given time? You know, if my job is a soldier and I'm in combat zone somewhere in Afghanistan or whatever, obviously my mindset will be different from civilian walking down the street of Las Vegas and getting attacked by, you know, three guys high on cocaine or PCP, armed with baseball bats and knives. You know, there's going to be very different reaction, very different response, very different level of shock. So, you know, in general, you know, there are two basic human emotions. There's love, there's fear. Everything else is derivative of one or the other. And fear is very powerful. Fear drives a lot of things. You know, and whoever says that he's fearless, he's either lying or he belongs in a mental institution. There are no fearless people. And you know, managing the fear is really one of the main things about training. It's not so much about technical means, how I'm going to pull the trigger, how I'm going to punch, how I'm going to use the knife, how I'm going to wrestle on the ground, choke somebody out, whatever the case might be. The first step in managing any fear is acceptance of what's to come. Without acceptance, if you denying the possibility of violence, if you're denying to yourself that someday you may be looking down the barrel of the gun, once it happens, if it happens, God forbid, the fear will be unmanageable at that point, unmanageable. You train for it. You train for it. You can't train for it by shooting at targets. Okay? Sometimes in some way, shape, or form, and you know, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. You have to put yourself somewhat in the target position. You know, what it means you have to put yourself in training on the losing end. You have to put yourself on the losing end. A lot of people when they train fighting, let's say, right, mixed martial arts, different martial arts, you know, be it Russian, Brazilian, Asian, whatever, doesn't matter, right? What do? We want to learn how to do things to others. Okay, the missing component is that 50% of that interaction is what the other person wants to do to you, or what is he trying to do to you. And without understanding and internalizing that, you know, that part of human psychology and reality of what happens in violence, you're only 50% prepared. As a matter of fact, you're less than 50% prepared because the emotional, psychological cost of what it does to you when that violence comes to you, and it's unmitigated, it's not censored, it's not predictable, it's not scripted, it's completely chaotic. You know, every moment is unexpected, every moment is unpredictable, every moment is different from what you thought. You cannot process that stuff in real time unless you train for it. So what it means, you know, let's say in hand-to-hand combat training, you have to be hit, you have to get hurt, you have to put yourself in the losing proposition, okay, and work from there, because that's how you find your lowest low, mentally, psychologically, emotionally. What is it that you can handle, and at what point do you break? You have to have, you know, training has to develop a lot of things, and a lot of people, when they look at training, they look at how am I going to act, right, when it happens. Here's the problem. If you look to the words, what I can do if it happens. Okay, what do you think is the most important part in all this? The most important part in all this, I. Okay, what people train for is what can be done. Hypothetically speaking, what can be done. Okay, so if you're shooting the target and someone, you know, pushes your back a little bit, that's not training what you can do. That's training what can be done, because you are not being pushed to your limits. You're nowhere near your limits. You know, but it's very uncomfortable and very hurtful to your pride training, because you will find out where you break. You will find out where the end of your performance is. The opposite is the guy that says, I know everything there is to know about violence. The guy who says, I can handle anything that life throws at me. These are the guys that usually die first in the fight. These are the guys that usually lose the biggest battles of their lives. Families, jobs, incomes, respect. Arrogance and pride are the number one killer of men. Not guns, knives, alcohol, drugs. It's arrogance and pride. And if training doesn't address, if training cannot touch your arrogance and pride, you're not training. You're actually nourishing your own arrogance and pride. You have to see yourself for what you are, not what you think you are, and not what you would want other people to think you are. Yeah. And it's the hardest part. The old name for the method that I try to teach and propagate, called Systema, which comes obviously from the old Russian. The old name for that is Познай себя, which is get to know yourself. If you don't know yourself, you don't know others. We're all very similar, regardless of our backgrounds, religions, nationalities. We're all very similar. If I don't know what's inside of me, I don't know nothing about you. How can I beat you? Clarity of mind of what needs to be done is something that is also achieved through training. Not just your moral compass or your convictions or your how good of a person you are, righteous person, whatever, all these high terms that a lot of people like to use. It's every situation, including violent situations. If you look at it, there's going to be some kind of an outcome at the end of it, right? As the situation develops. Through training, you gradually develop pretty clear understanding and being able to see the big picture. What does it need to look like at the end when it's over? Okay? That is your goal. That is your mission, and that's what you do. So recognizing what you're in, what kind of situation you're in, is very important as early as possible in the situation. A lot of people go through, like they say, when someone close to you dies, there are, stages of grieving, right? There's denial, there's anger, there are, all those stages. Similarly, there is denial and violence. When someone attacks you unexpectedly, you're walking with your wife, your girlfriend, your kids, whatever, right, your friends. Out of the blue, you just had nice, beautiful dinner, a couple of glasses of wine. It's a beautiful evening. Okay, next thing you know, there's 3 punks with baseball bats. Okay, beating the shit out of you. The absolute majority of the population will go through the stage of denial, fear, horror. Okay, acceptance will never even come to them. Okay, you listen to survivors of criminal attacks like that. I can't believe this happened. Which part you can't believe? When the first hit landed on your neck, which part of it you can't believe anymore? Okay. So, again, you cannot sit on the couch and think about it. This has to be trained. Yeah. There are times where you have to make choices. And sometimes those choices involve extreme measures, if you know what I mean. And it's if you don't have clear understanding of the situation, of the outcome that needs to be, and understanding of possibilities if you don't achieve the outcome that needs to be, it's going to be very hard to come to right decisions. And sometimes the right decision is in the eyes of quote-unquote normal people. It's going to be very immoral. It's going to be very inhumane. It can be judged in so many ways by the self-righteous ones. There are situations where the soldiers have to take a life. And sometimes they have to take a life of a child. That situation may involve something as sick and disgusting as mentally ill child that's being used by somebody as a suicide bomber. And you know that's a 13-year-old boy who hasn't done nothing wrong except being underdeveloped. You know, he's strapped with explosives and he's coming to you. What do you do? What do you do? After every action like that, there comes time for self-reflection. You know, and that's where all the terminology that the medical community uses, and you know, psychiatry community uses, the PTSD and all those other things. That's where a lot of those things happen. You know, a lot of soldiers, veterans, people that have done things like that or seen things like that eventually end up drinking, using substances. Some of them take their own lives. And that's the result of it. You know, and it's a big problem. It's a big problem, and that problem would be much better addressed if young soldiers, men, women, whatever, law enforcement officers would be trained and prepared for something like that. To accept it and see it very clearly what is at stake. Yes, he's a 13-year-old child. Yes, he's not guilty. Yes, he's not enemy. What he has on him and what he's going to do with or without his input, okay, is going to cause certain effect. Okay? Now you have to make a choice whether you accept the possibility that you will not take that child's life, and you're going to have you and maybe 7 or 8 of your comrades blown to pieces, or you're going to shoot a child. That's the choice that you have to make in split seconds. Sometimes as a 20-year-old young man, almost child yourself, still. You know, and then you live with it, or not. Okay. Once the violence starts, okay, is this in any way, shape, or form possible to de-escalate? If I cannot de-escalate, de-escalation may be verbal, de-escalation may be by me removing myself from the situation, de-escalation may be physical, where I show the person without really doing damage that it's a bad choice, or the combination. If I come to a realization that de-escalation is not possible, it's not time for limited warfare, so to speak. Okay? Warfare has to be limited at that point in time. Okay? One very despicable person many years ago wrote something that terrorism can only be terrorized by a terror of larger proportions. Okay? Same with violence. Once the violence gets out of control, when it's no longer, you cannot de-escalate it, you cannot prevent it, okay? You need to put up against it a higher degree of violence. Okay? It's not done on a personal level, personal reasons or whatnot. It's a process. It's not me against you, it's not person against person. It's the action that this person trying to perpetrate towards me, my loved ones, people that depend on me, whatever the situation is. Okay? And my action that stops that action. Okay? Most people without training cannot separate individual feelings, emotions from violence. That's where PTSD comes. That's where all the other issues, if you survive such encounter, that's where all the other issues come. Professional training should involve ability to disconnect. Some people will say it's very inhumane, it's very despicable, but emotions can be your biggest enemy in the fight. You will deal with them regardless if you survive. But in the process of fight itself, you cannot afford yourself to be emotional. You know, thoughts like that should not come into equation. It's a very, for lack of a better term, it's a very scientific and dry process. Is the situation possible to de-escalate? If not, your choice is overwhelming violence. That's it. A lot of things. It's a lot of things. It's your surroundings. It's you know, if we're talking violent situation, the presence of other people, the presence or possibility of presence of weapons. You know, your terrain, your surroundings. I don't necessarily, in the process, think about legal consequences if I'm acting as a civilian. But in training, you have to prepare yourself for that as well, because that's also a big part of the fight if you survive the fight. If you injure the person, or worse, if it was a gunfight, let's say, involving firearms or edged weapons or whatever, or multiple opponents, you know, you took somebody to the ground hard, you hit their head on the curb, now they're paralyzed. There will be legal consequences. You know, that needs to be prepared ahead of time. You cannot think about it in the fight. Oh, I should not throw him on the ground because, you know. So all that is preparation. But as far as, you know, things that you have to concern yourself and see and evaluate very quickly in the fight, there's again, you know, every aspect imaginable. You know, the visual fields, the light conditions, the terrain, the clothes I'm wearing, the presence or absence of weapons, what improvised weapons I could grab if I needed to, stick, stone, bottle. It's kind of noble word, but it's also a very weak defensive word.
Yes.
You know, some people will use the word winning, some people will use the word prevailing. You know, whatever another adequate word you can find would be better to use as to what are you trying to achieve. Survival is defensive in nature. I'm not saying that being defensive is in some way wrong, but being defensive majority of times in unmitigated violent situations is not enough. Being defensive is not enough. You have to take control of the situation. You have to take lead in the action. You cannot be reacting to actions. At some point, you have to take over the lead in that cycle. Okay? Because basically, if you look at, you know, what's going on between two or more people when the violence breaks out, okay, that person is trying to bring violence my way as I'm trying to bring violence his way. We have different goals. He tries to achieve whatever he tries to achieve. I try to stop him from achieving what he tries to achieve. If I'm only reacting to what you're trying to do to me, it will take a lot of luck for me to have positive outcome. So one has to have a pretty clear understanding that at some point, preferably as early as possible in the fight, whether it's a gunfight, empty-hand fight, whatever the case might be, you have to take a lead in that cycle of distributing the violence. Your opponent started as an assailant, as a criminal, as a whatever. Okay? As early as possible, you take the lead by overwhelming actions, overwhelming skill, better tactics, better usage of whatever environmental issues you have, and you make him react to you. So that's it. It varies. It varies. Sometimes it seems very slow. Sometimes it may seem very fast. Sometimes you will have, for lack of a better term, frames missing. You know, like a movie with a couple of frames missing. There will be those moments too. And again, a lot of it is dependent on the specific situation, you know, state of mind you're in, and again, your preparation and training. People that are trained very well, although things may happen very, very quickly, things don't seem to be very quick. It's very simple. I mean, you may be depressed because of job situation, relationship situation, whatever else the case might be, and all of a sudden you have this life-changing event of the person pointing the gun at your face. You know, everything else becomes irrelevant. Nothing else exists but you and that person with the gun in your face. Okay? You have to come to those realizations quickly and early in the process. Everything else needs to be shut out. At that point, the only thing that remains is a fight, violence, with all components of it, obviously. You know, your fields of vision, your everything else, your breathing, physiological functions, skills, applications, all that stuff. But you cannot have external stuff that bothered you a second ago enter in the equation at all. At all. You have to be able mentally to have a switch. And you are violence. That's it. I'm talking to you now. I can be talking to my 5-year-old son right now. You know, I can be telling him some child story. Okay. The next moment when someone breaks in through the door, in the next 2 seconds, I'm going to shoot that person 17 times. Okay. And in the next 2 seconds after I make what's necessary to do, okay, my first thing obviously is going to be to hold my son as a father again. And then all other things, make the call to law enforcement, make other arrangements, whatever else is needed, make sure that I, I don't know what I'm good at. It's not for me to judge. You know, it's I teach people, I help people, I consult, I raise 2 children, I try to make a living running business. What I'm good at, I don't know. It's so far it seems that in what I do as far as teaching, about violence, the response is relatively positive. So I'm probably somewhat good at it, maybe above average, and I enjoy doing it. Uh, it's very fulfilling, to see results, to see the changes, to see people change the way they think, change the way they train. Gradually, that also changes the way they interact with others and the way they live. It's far more reaching than just punching faces and shooting targets. So far, I'm doing all right in this field. I hope it continues. Mindsets don't win fights. Skills do. Mindsets don't come without skills. Mindset without having skills is bullshit that you're telling yourself. It's a lie. Okay? So the most important part is train skills. Skills will give you mindset. Mindset will not make you skilled. You have to give people a vision what can be done if they train. But you have to train people at the present level where they're at and push just a little bit further. Just a little bit further. They have to start getting different vision. They have to start getting few platforms on which to step on before you push them into the abyss of what violence is. The other, on the opposite end, is training people to the lowest common denominator. All you need to do is to learn how to double tap them in the chest, for example, right? Or, just learn this throw and take him to the ground and put him in a rear naked choke, for example, right? That's lowest common denominator. It's nowhere near enough. It doesn't cover, even a fraction of the percentage of what's possible, what can happen. So finding that middle to where, in the small portions you give people the vision, what they should be able to do if they train, what could be done if they train, but then scaling it back and training them at the present level, but with each step pushing it further. It takes time to find it, to find the process, the methodology, to develop not only methodology, but how you speak about it, how you explain to people, and how you make it legit in their own minds. You're not teaching yourself, you're teaching others. So to have people to where they listen, they watch, so between, let's say, a couple of demonstrations and explanations and then drill, or 10 drills, how does it all connect? What picture is your student getting? If you cannot connect that picture into a comprehensive something that in his mind something clicks. Okay, I need to get more physically fit. I need to stop worrying about how much gear I buy and what kind of holster, where I need to worry about how to use whatever I have. Okay? You're leading people somewhere. Otherwise, you're selling stuff. Pain is, it's a very interesting animal. If we didn't overthink what pain is, what it came from, and what it can lead to, we can deal with a lot more than we deal with. You know, there were stories about why U.S. Army switched from 9mm to 45 caliber after involvement in Philippines. They said because they were shooting those Filipino warriors that were running at them with all kinds of bladed weapons with 9mm pistols, and they just kept coming at them. So they decided that a larger caliber bullet, 45 caliber bullet, is going to do the trick. Nothing really changed. Why? Those people were not told that when you're shot, you're supposed to die. In current modern culture, through movies, through news, through everything else, in our minds, a lot of us are indoctrinated. Once you get shot, you fall and you die. Many people do, before they actually physiologically are dead. Their body still functions, but they made their choice through indoctrination. So first we have to realize, things that have happened to me, stab wounds, broken bone, gunshot injury. It should not be mental or emotional. Your body will decide when it stops functioning. Don't make decisions for your body. When your body can't function, and when it's time to go, it's going to get dark and silent, and everything will become a moot point. As long as it's not dark and silent and something moves, you do what needs to be done. That's, I hate to use the term pain inoculation, but to some degree that is necessary in training. And people don't like it. People don't like to be hit hard. People don't like to experience extreme pain. We love to function within our comfort zone. And what many fail to realize that there is no comfort in violence. Almost zero comfort in violence. But guess what? There's zero comfort in violence in that person on the other side too. That's it. I really, as far as being prepared for any kind of situation, I don't live in a paranoid way.
Yeah.
I don't carry 16 knives and 3 loaded guns with 16, loaded magazines. I carry what I carry regardless, depending where I'm at. I know pretty well my capabilities. I don't really think about possibilities. Okay, I observe the facts, and I evaluate based on knowing my capabilities and situation, what can be done, should be done, should I be there, should I remove myself from there. That's it. It's really, I don't go calculating, if this guy moved to the left, this guy, what would I do? No, it becomes a technique approach. You can't predict any of that. You can't. So I have a gun, I have a knife, I have a flashlight, whatever else I may have. I have my hands, my feet, my skills, certain abilities, capabilities, will to fight if needed, will to retreat if needed. And that's pretty much it. You have to be very objective about yourself and situations. You cannot overthink as to, if he does that, I can do this, and that. That's power training. That has to be ingrained in your body. Just walking and thinking like that, hell, you're probably going to have PTSD after 2 months living like that. It's not a healthy living. You can't live that way. If you're in the combat zone, in the war zone, obviously there are certain things, If I'm driving down the road and every day that road is a very busy road with a bunch of people, and all of a sudden at high noon, there's no people on the road, that's a pretty good indicator something is going on, something's wrong. Obviously, it raises your suspicions, right? So it's very similar to nature, If all of a sudden everything in the forest gets silent, expect something. Very similar in life. People, environment, places, surroundings, light conditions, groups of people, behaviors, loud noises, certain telltales about how people dress, look, or act. Yes, I'm profiling. I'm profiling. I openly admit I'm profiling. Based on experiences, based on statistics, cold statistics. Right? If you have 7 guys with their sagging pants and they're flashing gang signs, right, there's pretty good indicator something is going on, right? This is not Greenpeace. This is not people protesting the, bad treatment of animals in chicken processing plants. It's something. It indicates something to you, right? Okay, you have choices to make. You have choices to make. I can tell you this: that predators, which criminals are predators, okay, they choose their victims. Okay? Some people go, just don't look at them. You just made yourself a victim. They know when you look away, you're scared. They know it. Am I saying look them in the eyes and challenge them and go like, hey, what's up? No, you're gonna start the fight. Okay. But looking at people knowingly, cracking a slight smile, nodding your head, it sends a very powerful message. They know you know. And it's very powerful. And it makes them not to know who you are, what you have, and what you're capable of. 90% of the time it's enough. Human psychology is not that complicated. It's not that complex. We measure each other. Humans measure each other. Is this possible victim, or is this not a target? Okay, criminals certainly measure the targets. Certainly. Have you went through your mental exercise? How would you react seeing your close friend? Let me give you a worst case scenario. Seeing your child being shot in front of you. What would you do? I ask that sometimes in training. I ask people that I know them and I know their children. Let's say your son's name is Johnny. And I would tell you, so if you saw Johnny right next to you, take one to the neck. His blood is all over your face and everything. And he just drops. He doesn't breathe, he doesn't gurgle, nothing. What's your next step? What physiological things render you becoming weak? Like sometimes you get sick, right? And you get sick like people say in America, sick like a dog. Right? And you don't even have the will to get out of bed, to take the trash out. That's your willpower. It's a good time to train. Because when you get shot, but you're still living, you're still functioning, you're already sick. Do you have a will to go on? Those kind of things. You need to find out about yourself. Where do you break? Where does your comfort end and you give up?